Hey guys, welcome back to Dan's Chess Lounge. Today I have a great game to present to you all. It's with Vassily Ivanchuk versus Artur Yusupov. And Ivanchuk is better known as Chucky. So this was a semifinal game of the 1991 candidates match. At that time, Chucky was the hottest player on the chess scene, and he was just destroying everyone. He had won a lot of tournaments earlier in the year, so he was definitely like the heir to the throne to challenge Gary Kasparov for the title, and he was supposed to be like the next great chess player that's going to dominate chess. But the other chess players had something to say about that, and they just wasn't going to roll over and let him, win. So just as a side note as well, during the time of this game, there was a coup going on to overthrow the Russian leader Mikhail Gorbachev in Moscow. So both players was like majorly on edge during this time, and that added to the nerves. And reportedly, before and after the matches that they would play, they would be glued to CNN to see what's going on back in Russia. So that added to the nerves and the anxiety as well during the game. So let's go ahead and check out the game and see what transpired. Let's see. So Chucky was white. He started out with the English opening here. C4, E5 this is supposed to be the strongest way to combat the English. Take your claim in the center. G3, D6, Bishop G2, G6. Now here, black is trying to transpose into his king's Indian defense and get out of like the English style opening. D4 is a good move. It's a central strike. Knight D7, Knight C3, Bishop G7, which is eyeing the pawn on D4 there, giving it more reinforcement and support. And just as a side note, let me go back one move here and to say that the reason why that black played Knight D7 right here is because he kind of feared white exchanging pawns on the E file there, and then white would have been able to swap off the queen on D8, and black would not have been able to castle. So that's why he played knight to D7 there. That would stop that. So you had knight to C3, bishop G7, knight F3 reinforces the D pawn, knight GF6, developing move, and it also clears the way for black to castle. Castles. Good. They're following good opening principles and opening fundamentals. I like to mention this as much as possible because if they can do it as professionals, then you know and you realize the importance of it. Us as amateurs, we should definitely be following the fundamentals and principles as well. In the game, Queen C2 was played. E4 is the main line right here to take more space in the center. But with this game here, they were playing with a shortened time control. So Chucky wanted to be a little dubious and play a little bit more, get away from the main lines and challenge Yusupov's understanding of the position, really. And so he played, instead of playing the main line right here, E4, he played Queen C2 with the idea of his rook coming over and then being on this great file here for when everything opens up. And then Yusupov played Rook E8, which is actually not the best move here. So the dubious Queen C2 move for Chucky paid off because Yusupov could have played E takes D4 here. Knight takes D, knight to B6 attacking the pawn on C4. B3 protects that. C5 hits the knight. A6 hits the knight again. Now the knight is really misplaced on A3. And now you would have bishop to F5 hits the queen, and black is doing great here. He's equalized. his position would be much better than in the game, actually. But he did not do that at all. In the game, he played rook e8 instead. So now you have white being able to capitalize on his dubious move earlier with queen c2. He plays rook d1, putting his rook on the d file for when it opens up. It's a great spot for the rook to be. c6, it blunts the bishop there on g2. b3, now this clears the way for the bishop because the bishop is better if it can come out on either the b2 or the a3 square. There's not really much that the bishop could do if it went the other way. If it went to g5, it would just get kicked with the pawn on h6, and then it would have to go back to probably e3 or d2. It was, and then d2 would be in the way of the rook. So the best way for the bishop to come out is over here on the a3 and b2 squares. Queen e7. Now again, the bishop comes out to bishop a3, and it hits the soft spot there. It's pinning the queen there on e7. e4. Now you have the pawn making more space for black and pushing into the enemy camp. Is this a pawn going wild? What's going on here with this pawn? Now you have knight g5, which hits the pawn in several different ways. The bishop, the other knight, the queen. I'm asking you guys, did black overextend by pushing his pawn out there? Wow, if you thought he did on the last move, what about now? e3 with the pawn. And this here, it was an interesting move. White played f4, which is a little bit of a blunder actually, because now white's king side is a little exposed and open and vulnerable to an attack. A lot of the GM commentators and GM analysts that was looking at this game felt like white should have just played f3 here. Then his position would have been more stable. But he played f4 instead. You know, now black has ideas of playing the pawn to h5 and the h4 and breaking up the king side. Then he could play knight to h5, also attacking that pawn on g3. So basically, this just made his white's king side a lot more exposed and vulnerable. Knight f8. b4 was played in the game. White just ignored the pawn on e3 because there was no real good way to capture it actually. If white would have played knight ge4, then black plays bishop f5, which pins the knight to the queen there. So that's not a good way to capture it. If white would play rook d3, then again you would have bishop f5, which hits the rook and the queen there. So there's no good real way to capture that pawn on e3, ironically. So then white goes ahead with his queenside plan of expanding on the queenside and getting his queenside attack going. Black plays bishop f5, hits the queen. Queen goes to b3 because he wants to attack anyway on the king side. Look out for the push on b5 coming up soon. h6 puts the question to the knight. Knight drops back. Now you have the knight really going into enemy territory with knight g4. Eyeing that f2 square. b5, attacking on the queen side. g5 is a really good move here. Now, it's clearly a race here. Who's going to win? You have black attacking on the king side. You have white attacking on the queen side. Just as a side note, I love playing the King's Indian attack because to me, the king side attacks and races are always much better than the queen side. I mean, for the queen side races, what happens if they get through? Then usually, positionally, white's going to be better. You know, they're going to break through they're going to get more material. But if the kingside attack gets through, then you know what happens? Checkmate. And that's the name of the game. Checkmate. So I like kingside attacks better than queenside attacks. B takes c6. B takes c6. Now you have this crazy looking move here. Knight e5. Now even though the knight went to a square where it looks like it's under attack, the pawn here looks like it can just take, right? But no, because look here, you got the bishop that pins the queen. So there's not a real good way to capture the knight here. Black does not want to give up his bishop for the knight, because this is a valuable piece here, especially since it's on his diagonal that's open. So he doesn't want to do that. And then he doesn't really want to take with the knight as well. I'll show you what happens if he takes with the knight. Then you would have the pawn captures knight, and then Black's like push that he was doing on the king side is no longer there. You know, the whole point of him playing g5 was to try to start ripping open White's king side, and that would just all be vanished and wiped away. So because of that, you have G takes f4. That's what Black played in the game here, which rips open White's king side. Knight takes c6, hits the queen, and it also opens up that beautiful long diagonal for the light square bishop for White. Queen goes to g5. Bishop takes d6, grabbing more material here. Knight g6 protects the f pawn. Knight d5 coming over, trying to maybe reroute it as a defensive piece to White's king side, because White has to be on the lookout for an attack now. If you look at Black's pieces, Black has bishop, knight, bishop, queen, knight, and you can consider that rook too, all lined up and aiming towards White's king side. So, and the only thing that's defending over there is White's bishop. So maybe the knight can reroute back to the king side at some point to help out for the defense, because Black's attack is coming, definitely. Now you have queen h5, which attacks the h2 square, threatening destruction. h4 stops that. Now you have a sack right here. Black sacks his knight on h4 here. F takes G was a little bit better, though. That was a better continuation. There was not really a need for Black to sack his knight. He started his attack a little bit too soon. F takes G was a better continuation. Then you would have bishop takes G, knight takes, knight f4, queen goes to g5, knight h3 hits the queen, queen f6 is the result. And Black is just better at this point here. It's a more comfortable game for him to play. His attack is strong, and this would be a better line for him to play. But instead, he decided to sack his knight here on h4, and White accepts it. White says, prove it to me. And then queen takes h4. Now, at this moment here, this is a very, very critical moment in the game. I mean, Black is threatening death and destruction, really. You know, you got queen h2, you got queen f2, you got this thorn, this e3 thorn in White's position here. I mean, it's looking pretty scary, if you ask me, for White. So this is a critical moment in the game. And in the game, Chucky played knight to e7, knight d to e7, right? And this is actually a wrong move. It is a knight move that should have been played here, but not knight d to e7 check. He should have played knight c to e7 because the knight on c wasn't really doing anything. If you notice, the knight on d is actually attacking the f pawn, and it's also attacking the e pawn here, and it's only one move away from being like that defensive piece that we were talking about. So he chose the wrong knight. So he played. He should have played knight c to e7. Then it would have looked something like king goes to h8. Then the knight would take the bishop there on f5, and it also hits the queen there. Queen goes to h2, king f1, and then you have bishop e5 with the threat of f3 coming. D takes e5, rook goes over to g8, and now it's almost unstoppable. You would have knight takes d, knight d takes the e3 pawn, knight takes knight, knight takes knight, f takes e3, queen b7, and then once the dust settles, white would be up 2 bishops, and black's attack has fizzled out. There's nothing going on for black's attack over there as long as that bishop is protecting the h1 square, which it is. So at this point here, white would just be winning at this point. But that's not what happened in the game. If you go back, Chucky took with the wrong piece. Chucky moved the wrong piece. He moved the D knight instead, knight D to e7. And now some commentators seem to think that Chucky was just calculating so deeply that he simply forgot and overlooked which knight to move during the game, that he just got so caught up in the calculations. But you never know. So again, he played knight D to e7 check, king goes to h8, and he snaps off that bishop there on f5, hits the queen, queen goes to h2. But see, the difference though now is that there's no knight here that's attacking these pawns, because these pawns here are like thorns in the white's position. He was able to get that pawn to e3, and then he was able to reinforce it with a protective pawn on f4. So that's why the knight was so critical to be able to snap those pawns off, because black has so much pressure on the king side over there. So king f1. If you guys were in this position here, how would you continue for black? How would you continue the attack for black here? Rook e6, brilliant move, double exclam. And the purpose of the rook move here is not to play rook g8 so it can be behind the bishop, but no, rook lift. Rook e6 with the idea of going to rook g6, and then it's going to be trouble on this file here. So checkmate will come pretty soon with the rook being on the g6 square and dominating that g file with the queen and the knight as well. It's no way that white will be able to survive. So white plays queen b7, which attacks the rook here in the corner. And this is another incredible move coming up. Black just plays rook g6 anyway. He says, go ahead, take my rook on a8 with check, mind you, because he realizes that his attack that's going to come from that is going to be too dangerous. He doesn't care about this rook in the corner. The rook in the corner wasn't doing anything anyway. So really, it was never in the game anyway. And so Chucky accepts. He plays queen takes a8, and then again he says, prove it. Show me what you got. King a7. And then at this point, he gives up his queen for this move right here. Knight e7 check, which grabs that rook on g6. So because with the rook being on g6, checkmate was coming. Checkmate was definitely coming. So he gave up his queen in order to get the rook. It was that important, and that rook was that valuable. So then f takes knight, and now you have knight takes g7. So if you just stop and evaluate the position here, White has 2 bishops and 2 rooks for the queen. That is definitely compensation for the queen. More than enough material compensation for the queen. If you think about the queen being worth only 9 points, 2 bishops and 2 rooks is definitely compensation. But that's materially speaking. Positionally, White's lost. Positionally speaking, White is definitely in major trouble here. So now you have knight f2 with the threat of knight h3 coming after that. Then that's going to allow Black to play knight g1 checkmate. So you have bishop takes f4, which is basically just trying to stop Black from checkmate, really. So now he can't play knight h3. He's got to take the bishop here. Now you have knight e6, which attacks the queen. But you know what? The queen just goes right back to h2 with the threat of the knight going to h3, and then the queen will be going here to g1. So now you have rook d b1, which he's going to harass the Black king as much as he can at this point. Knight h3, and then Black just continues with his plan. He says, you're not going to be able to stop me. I'm just going to go ahead with what my plan is. Rook b7 check. King goes to h8. Rook b8 check. But guess what? Queen takes rook. Bishop takes the knight. And now you have the incredible queen g3, threatening queen f2 checkmate. And there is nothing that White can do that can stop the queen from checkmating. And it's just ironic and just so critical to see that it's done with the pawn. That same pawn that was overextended when it went to e4, and then when it pushed along to e3, that's like the little pawn that could, and it's actually helping to deliver checkmate at the end of the game. So Ivanchuk resigned at this point here because there's nothing he can do. So Yusupov, he defeated the hottest player on tour at the time, and he knocked Vassily Ivanchuk out of the running to be world champion. So this was a great victory for Artur Yusupov. And after the game, the players went back to their hotel rooms and they turned CNN back on to see what was going on with the coup to overthrow Mikhail Gorbachev. So it was a very dangerous time going on in Russia at that time. So it is kind of good to see that at least chess was a little bit of a distraction, during such serious times going on in the world. So, okay, guys, that actually completes the book of Winning Chess Brilliancies by Yasser Seirawan. I hope you guys enjoyed not just this lecture and this game, but I hope you enjoyed all of them. So go ahead and check out the videos if you haven't seen any of them. They're great games. And I'll see you guys next time. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Until then.